I was able to really separate the emotional aspect from selling and from something that you care about, something you pour a lot of time into it early on. So anything that was a rejection just fueled me. I put a premium on anything that would even remotely interfere with my family life.
It's okay to set those boundaries within your business and not feel guilty setting those boundaries, because you wouldn't do it at another business, so don't allow them to do it at your own.
All I want to do is know that I made my kids happy.
Welcome to Baby Bumpin' Business, the podcast for creative moms growing a baby and a brand at the same time. I'm your host, B. Troford Wilson, photographer, educator, and first-time mom-to-be, sharing the real, unfiltered journey of pregnancy, entrepreneurship, and everything in between. Each week, I'll be joined with a fellow creative mom to talk about the beauty, the burnout, and the balance of it all. So let's get into it. Today's guest, we have the beautiful and the wonderful Audrey Woulard, who is a Chicago-based portrait photographer and a Nikon USA ambassador. Hey, Audrey.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I'm so honored to be on this platform with you because, I've been fangirling for years, but to be able to talk about something that women don't often talk about within this field, thank you so much for getting on this podcast with me today.
Oh, it is an honor. I'm a fangirl of you too. So I am so happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So I know your story is a little bit different about going into entrepreneurship. So can you actually tell us about how you got into entrepreneurship during your motherhood journey?
Yeah. So I have 4 children, and I had a really good corporate job with my second one. So our first and our second one have a bit of a gap. I was that mom who said I was only going to have one, and here we are. Right. So after the second one, he was a baby, went back to work, do what, lots of working moms do. And I had everything set up. I had him enrolled in the daycare within the office. So he was right there. So what I would do is I would go downstairs and I would go see my baby, play, whatever, and then come back. And so it was at one point I called my husband crying and just said, I can't do it anymore. I just couldn't just leave him, even though to this day, this kid was going about his business. But I was in tears. I'm talking tears, and said, I can't do it. I have to quit. Long story short, I ended up becoming a stay-at-home mom. And my husband, knowing that he's an entrepreneur. He's always been one since I've known him. And he came home with a camera and said, hey, maybe this will keep you busy. And I'm like, okay, fine. And what ended up happening was our younger 3 are each a year apart. So just to tell you that the chaos within the household, when my third was born, I'm talking like 3 months, like 12 weeks old, when I'm taking these pictures, you'll take some for friends, like nothing, not a lot, but I was way more than I wanted to be. And I said to myself, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to make money at it. If I'm really just, we'll get into that. I had some really strict hours that I put upon myself. But I said, if I'm going to be away for any point, because I became a stay-at-home mom, I quit my job to do it. I said, I'm going to get paid. And I was really adamant about being paid handsomely for what I was doing. And that's how it started. And I went headfirst business right into it. And the rest is history.
You are. That's beautiful. So how were you able to take your corporate knowledge into the entrepreneurship journey? Because I know most times when we start as an entrepreneur, it's mostly, it's just a hobby and we think about the business part second. You went into it head first with business headstrong first.
Yeah, dude, that's such a good question. And I love talking about this stuff because it makes me learn so much about me. I feel a lot of things really worked, and not so much in terms of knowing business marketing, sales, and things like that. But I was able to really separate the emotion from my work, if that makes sense. I mean, no, let me not say that. I love my work, right? But I was able to really separate the emotional aspect from selling and from something that you care about, something you pour a lot of time into it early on. So anything that was a rejection just fueled me, if that
Mm.
makes any sense, right? Even I think to this day, people think I'm kind of cold, but I'm really like not. I'm just able to separate it because once you get to know me, like, oh, Audrey's this. But that A really helped with the transition. And then B, understanding what my worth is worth. Just because with a 9 to 5 job, especially corporate, everything is so gray. It's so cut and dry. It's like, hey, turn this in. If you don't turn it in, you get fired. If you don't get fired, it's just like they don't care about you, not your feelings. Because I was that mother who was nursing in a bathroom, not I mean pumping. So I was
Right.
one of those. But yeah, it was really a understanding my time, my just self-worth, that cost. And I knew that early, even if it was my time, it cost. And I learned that really, really early on. It was just ingrained just through corporate, honestly.
And
Yeah.
I think that that's something that I feel like a lot of business owners and women, we get that a lot, that we're cold in business. And it's like, it's
Mhm.
not that we're cold, it's that we're straightforward and we understand this is business, so we treat it like business. And this is personal, so we treat it like personal. And there's
Yep.
no room to be like, oh, well, well, they had, no, this is what my worth is. This is how much it costs. And if we get rejected, we just move on to the next versus taking it so internal, if that makes sense.
Exactly. And understanding, especially as a mom and knowing my kid's only little for so it's it goes fast. I put a premium on anything that would even remotely interfere with my family life. Like it had a
Mm,
premium on it. I'm talking birthdays, anything close to a holiday, price goes up. It goes up. And if it felt, if I was in a position that I even had to bring my family with me, you paid for that. Like I mean, I'll get into that, but I was very cut and dry on it, unapologetically. And I'm
right.
happy. That's one of the best decisions I ever did in my entire life, was put my
Right.
family first.
So before we get into that part, because that sounds so juicy, I want to jump into it right there. But I don't want to skip over where you're talking about being the mother that had to nurse in the bathroom. What did that feel like, and what was that final straw for you to be like, you know what, I want to be at home and I don't want to do this corporate job anymore?
It was. I felt like I went to work wearing two hats. I was pumping in the bathroom. I would pump in the car. I was. Do you know what I mean? I felt like I went to work a mom, and I felt honestly, I felt like a single woman. While I
Mm,
was working. I don't know how else to explain it, but I felt like I was on my own. Do you know what I mean? And I just had to figure everything out. And I had to really, because you couldn't wear that badge of, oh, excuse me, I got to go pump. You know what I mean? Just little things. I mean, I used to wear suit jackets. So this is so gross. So I wouldn't like leak and it showed. Do you know what I mean? Just so many different tiny nuances that you had to really think about, and I had to pretend like they didn't exist.
mm.
I had to, and it was like, and I'm so straightforward. I'm like, oh, I'm leaking. I can't say that in a meeting. And then I was young too, so I already had that label of youth, coupled with being a mom. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right. So it's like all these layers being added
All
onto.
these layers, and I felt like I had to just pretend to be something that I wasn't, and it really used to get to me a lot.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
So you left, you stayed at home, and then you decided your husband granted you a camera and blossomed into this beautiful journey that you're on now. So how
Yeah.
did this idea of the corporate and motherhood, how did that shape? I know you briefly talked about it, but how did you really allow it to shape your business practices moving forward and your scheduling, all of that?
Honestly, I always knew to have a schedule. I always knew. I mean, right down to scheduling time to take a nap in my room. I would have day off in the afternoon. I scheduled this time off, even though you think, oh well, I can go downstairs and edit or something. I stuck to those times that I would just block off. I knew I blocked it off for a reason. So I'm going to follow the reason, just like you would do at work. I mean, at a corporate job, this is the schedule. You follow the schedule, even though you can do something different. Guess what? If I'm at my 9 to 5 and for whatever reason, they had a team meeting that was canceled. Do you think I'm going to go try to schedule another meeting? No, I took I took that time off to, I'm like, oh, I got a free day. This is the same thing I treat photography and running my business, is that I'm the facilitator now, or whoever, like my assistant. I have to put all these little tiny things into place. So if I know I'm burnt out, I'm tired, block it off. Literally, I may want to block off and say I'm having a meeting, but I'm having a meeting with myself with a bag of cherries and just just so that I can think about some things. So that's like one of them. The biggest thing that I feel that it helped with, and I'm noticing it more now in the back end of my career, is how to deal with the industry and anything like that, because that's very corporate related. So I know exactly how structure works, how just I think, and not to go too far like into that, I think any niche of photography that you work with, there are hierarchies within within it. So even when I started as a family photographer, there's a hierarchy in that relationship that you have to deal with. That's corporate structure. Do you know what I mean? So I understood hierarchy and how to approach that as such, if that makes any sense.
It
you
does.
know
It does.
yeah. So yeah, I'm I think very corporate girly.
Awesome. So for those that aren't a corporate girly, for those that are getting into this entrepreneurship journey, or for those that are already in it, what is some advice that you would give them in terms of setting those boundaries, but also treating this journey and this business like an actual business and structuring it as such?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I'm going to start this off with, and people who, anytime I say this, it always ruffles a little bit of, it ruffles a little feathers, because it's something that they don't like women to say. But I have always had work-life balance. I've always had it. And people say, "Oh, you look younger than you are." I'm like, "That's because I keep stress free. I've always had work life balance, and because of that, it's a couple of things I would always tell people, who, especially who have families. One thing I would always say: the business is always going to be there. Grow your business with your family. Don't feel that just because something is offered to you, it's not going to be offered to you tomorrow. What's not going to be afforded you tomorrow is your kid at 5 years old going to that ballet recital. That's gone. That's gone. But whatever you were offered from a client on that same day, you'll get the next year, because you'll be just that good. That would be the very first thing I would say. Painting a schedule for your how the business affects your life. And so what I mean by that is, let me see if and if I'm not explaining this right, please tell me. I used to schedule a day to edit when I had nobody, working for me. I used to edit all the time on Tuesdays. That was my day. That was my day. I knew I was going to be up all night, but that was my day. I would, give me a little glass of wine. I had my music on. You know what I mean? That was my time. But I knew I had to get it done on that day. Do you know what I mean?
Mm,
Most people don't
right.
schedule little things like that they feel, hey, I could just get up and do it tomorrow, or I can get it. That's how you get out of whack. That's just because you can do it doesn't mean you should.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. I love this.
Hey.
I hope people taking notes because I'm over here like, okay, so I need to start.
And start even, you don't have to go, especially in the age of the internet, we always like to compare ourselves. And that's the worst thing to ever do, is to start comparing. Don't compare yourself to anybody. But it doesn't mean that I had this day planner, and I had a schedule. No, it wasn't really like that. It was like, Tuesday, this is what you're doing. Wednesday and Thursday can be a hot mess. Do you know what I'm saying? But
Right.
it started me on scheduling certain things, if that makes any sense. Start small. There's no reason to rush it. You don't have to start and just like, I got to do this and do this. You're setting yourself up for failure.
Mm, mm.
Always start small.
That's beautiful. I'm a Capricorn. I'm a big calendar girl. If it's not on the calendar, I'm not showing up. I need to know like when, if I'm doing lunch with somebody, if I have a meeting, it has to be on the calendar. And me and my husband fight about it all the time because he's not a calendar type of guy. We're working on him. But when it came to like balancing and even scheduling like that, how would you encourage other mothers out there to understand that it's okay to set those boundaries within your work and motherhood? how to set those boundaries and being okay with setting those boundaries without feeling that guilt of, oh, I got to do this or I got to do that.
So for me, operative words for me, it was very easy for me to understand the time that I have with my kids and my husband. All of them, matter. I couldn't just get that back. I just couldn't get it. I just could not get it back. There was, and I don't know what made me understand that very early on, because we just think, everything is there, but time is so fleeting, especially with children. I cannot express that enough. I cannot express that enough. I knew early on. I have so many stories on that in terms of those boundaries that I'm so happy to this day that I set. I'm so happy to this day. I'm serious. I mean, that just knowing that you cannot get it back. Think of it like a wedding. If you can't mess up a wedding, you don't want to mess up that, your home life as well. You can't get it back. But with women, I feel, a lot of us we want to please, we want to be nurturing, we want to make people happy. But you have to understand something: when the people are asking you to do something that is crossing a boundary, they're not thinking about you, they're thinking about themselves.
Mm.
So you got to think about yourself too. It's okay to give a little bit just to be a good customer service and, whatnot. But when I know a boundary is going to get crossed or could get crossed, I have a backup plan that does not interfere with that boundary. Do you know what I mean? That I can present to the client because of X, Y, and Z. Because I know my answer is going to be no.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? My answer is going to be no because I know I'm going to say no. Let me
Right.
offer this so you don't have to ask me and I have to tell you no.
Right.
That's just, like I didn't give out my cell phone to anybody. I don't
Smart.
want you texting me, like, and even on my website, it says, this is a landline. So you're not going to have access to me whenever you want.
24/7.
Right.
Right.
I could ease
Right.
up a little bit now, but I'm so caught in that boundary.
Where it's like, it ain't broken, don't fix
Right,
it.
I'm so caught in that, but I had little boundaries where you could not get in touch with me, reach me past business hours. Emails, I was not answering past business hours. I don't care what happened. I'm not answering it at all. I was very, very cut and dry. And let's say I had an early morning session that may have happened before business hours. I let that client know, hey, we can discuss. So if something happens, call me around 7. I'm just throwing that out there so that they know this boundary is an exception that I'm letting you in on because of that. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. That no, but that's a gem right there. 'Cause I think oftentimes we as entrepreneurs, we feel as if we can't set those boundaries or that we shouldn't have the standard 9 to 5 hours where it's like, no, if someone emails me or texts me at 10 p.m., I should respond. And it's like, no, you don't, you can wait until the next morning. It is not dire need to respond to that client. And but oftentimes, especially as entrepreneurs and people pleasers as women, where we feel like, oh, like if I don't respond fast enough, then I'm not, I'm not giving them the best customer service or I'm not providing them with this or that. And it's like, no, it's okay to set those boundaries within your business and not feel guilty setting those boundaries because you wouldn't do it at another business. So don't allow them to do it at your own.
Right. And just because you can do something like, oh, it's okay if I answer this, you are literally priming whomever you're working with to know that boundary does not exist anymore.
Right. Woo,
It's like training a
woo.
dog, really, if you think about it. That's a really bad analogy, but you know what I mean?
Right.
But it's like training.
And like you, but it's like when you talking with clients, you're teaching them how you want to be treated. It's just, it goes vice versa. It's not just how you expect them to, how they expect you to treat them in business. It's vice versa as well. So if you're giving them that, then you're giving them the leeway to call you at a late hour, and then you're mad that they calling you, but you responded when they text you at that hour.
Yep.
You
And
know,
it does
so
nothing but get worse and worse and worse. Next thing you know, you're wondering, like, why do I get all these calls at night and I don't know why? And my first thing would be, you kind of set it up that way.
right,
And so for especially new moms, start now. Literally just start it now and then it'll become a habit. Because it's a habit for me now. I can let up on a lot of my boundaries just because my kids are now, older. But I kind of like my freedom.
It's like, I still like this. Yes. So, how did you find that balance of being a mother and starting this new business and being able to set those boundaries? How easy was it for you to spend time with your kids and to be able to cherish those moments? Because I know oftentimes, especially as photographers, it's hard for us to say no to jobs when we're chasing the bag, when we're chasing
Mm,
every opportunity, when we're chasing every money, every opportunity. If we say no to this, they're not going to call again. And
yep.
should I really sacrifice this time with my child? I really could just bend over a little bit for that. What would you say towards that?
Oh my God. Oh my God. First of all, I'm going to say this. All moms will have those thoughts until that kid is 18 years old. I'm not kidding you that because, childhood, and parenting shows up in different ways. And as an entrepreneur, it's going to be a lot of just so much. So, okay. Oh, that's a loaded question, B. Okay. It's a loaded, I mean, it's a loaded question because I'm telling you, like my top three things that I've ever done in my life, my best decision, my top three, growing my business with my kids. Top three.
Hmm.
Top three. My kids are all in their 20s. And they to this day say they don't remember me working.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. They don't because I always put them first on everything. As they got older with certain things, um, they knew where I was gonna show up. They knew we would be there. So I'm gonna go backwards really quick, just because this was will those jobs always be there? So when I started getting my name out there, the phone is ringing. You've got these jobs coming. Even as my career moves up and I'm starting to speak, you're being offered to speak and do different things, and all of that stuff is for pay. You've got different big sponsors saying, "Hey, we want you here," and I have to say no. Or I really can't say no. So do you know what I mean? Like, how do you do this? I remember I was asked to do a commercial for Profoto in Barcelona. My
Oh,
son, who was 16 at the time, so he's a big kid, and he was really into basketball. The two middle one ended up getting basketball scholarships. So we were a basketball family, and he had a really, really important game. Most people are like, oh, he's big. You can miss that. What do you
he's
care?
16. Yes.
Right. But at the end of the day, this is still my kid. It's still important to him. This will be the childhood trauma people talk about, right? My parents weren't there. All of those things I think about what we ended up doing, because my husband was helping in the business now at this time, is that we flew to Barcelona. We had a weekend break. We got our behinds back on the plane and went back to Chicago. Showed my father was actually there watching my son, but we walked right in there right after the first quarter started. Watched the game, was with him, and the next day, well, we had a couple of hours off, but then that Sunday we flew back just to watch that game. Literally,
Wow.
I mean, I've done that like three times that I can think of in very important situations that I couldn't turn something down. But I'm like, if it costs me a little extra money, to be present, it would be worth it. And now all I want to do is know that I made my kids happy. And it's really hard to even to fathom that would be an issue as a mom. That's why we have mom guilt.
Right.
It's literally why we have mom guilt. But if I did not have those boundaries, releasing myself from understanding that those opportunities are going to always be there.
Mm.
Only time they're not going to be there is if you put your camera down, or whatever other entrepreneur venture. If you take that break, okay, then we're talking. But if you're still kind of active, but you're like, really, I want to turn this down, but I don't have a sitter over this time, or my kid is having a real bad case of diarrhea and I don't know what's going on. I really don't trust anybody to be with my baby. I you say less with me, understanding that, because all those little nuances and all of them, they, well, not diarrhea part, but they only come one time. So, even with that, having those boundaries are just really, really important. I know I was saying I went back and started on the back end with, my kids, but going to the front end of it is that really it's almost the same. Is that The only difference I think is that in this climate of photography, it seems as if the jobs are more scarce, right? And because the jobs are more scarce, it gives that artist a sense of urgency, if that makes any sense. But I would offer anybody listening to flip something in your mind. Just flip something in your mind. There's a quote that I live by that I can't remember why I lived by it, but in hindsight, it makes sense, and I'm glad I lived by it. The more accessible you are, the less desirable you become. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
So the more that you're in someone's face, the more that you're present, not that that's a bad thing, right? But the more that you are accessible, the less desirable you become. So if you have a little bit of scarcity, naturally people gravitate to you. You didn't disappear. You're just not always as available. They don't need to know why you're not always available, right? It's because little Bobby's having a meltdown and no one needs to know that. Do you know what I mean? No one needs to know that. That when I believe part of my longevity in this industry, hands down, is because I had that mindset. I was not just so overly out there. And that was just because 100% my kids. My kids. Now there are people there are conference owners who know me really well and they know it was because of my kids. But overall, people, they don't know that I made the decision family first, 100%.
that's
100%.
beautiful. And I think especially like within this day and age, like you said, with social media, with how influx of we feel like there's so much photographers in our industry where we're gonna miss out. And then if I sit back a little bit or if I spend more time with my family, it's gonna take away from this. So hearing that is so refreshing to know that we don't you don't have to feel that way and don't feel as if you're making a huge sacrifice because you're not making a sacrifice. You're just creating that boundary and that balance. But at the end of the day, you get to choose what type of mother do you want to be? How do you want to show up for your kids? And how do you want them to remember you? Because hearing you say that your kids don't remember you working and knowing how much you be working, and it's like that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, and I will scream this from the rooftops that you know 0 to 18 is as long as it seems. Family life, motherhood, and all of that will make that time go. It will be the fastest non-marathon that you will ever run in your life. It just will be. Which, as from a photography perspective, what do we say? Take the picture, remember what you look like, remember this, remember that. Our entire business of, especially with the from a portrait perspective, is about remembering. It's about preserving memories. So having that thought process, knowing that you need to be involved in your memories and how important that is, should really be a good motivator to create those boundaries that you need so that you can enjoy, you know, your kid.
Right. This is the I'm over here like okay, so this is what I need to do during my maternity leave. I need to restructure because I need to show up for my kid. And Audrey said this. And Audrey,
I would even
but
tell you the one thing I have only one regret is how much I did not preserve and or remember pregnancy.
mm,
I wish I just didn't think about it. I just didn't. I was just such in the mode, you know what I mean? Even again of my younger three being a year apart. So I had three in diapers. I had three under three, right? Is that the number? Three kids, three and under. There you go. But I didn't take, just pictures of my belly and all the little tiny stuff that when those kids are big that you can be like, oh, I wish I would have did this and remembered that, and it just goes so fast. Just goes fast.
that's wow. Yeah, I've had to find myself taking more pictures, especially because I keep telling my husband, I'm like, this, I ain't doing this again. So everyone's like, take pictures, you're gonna need memories, especially since if you keep saying you're not gonna do it again. So we gotta remember this. And I'm like,
You
yeah.
said that, B, and here we are. I said that to everybody who would listen.
So what changed that?
I miss pregnancy.
Mm,
That's it. I'm serious. I missed it. I mean, I missed it. I did. I liked being pregnant.
Wow. You
Yeah.
don't hear that often.
And I liked my belly. I had a good looking belly too. I mean, but and I have no pictures of it. No, yeah, I did. I like pregnancy to like to the point, I was like, all right, had this kid. All right, had this kid. All right, had this kid. Now I did get to a point where I'm not having no kids. I'm done. Completely done. But every stage has its beauty. Every stage has beauty. And to find yourself saying, in hindsight, I wish I woulda, is gonna be a regret.
Mm,
Especially when
mm,
you have choices.
right. That's woo, woo. So you said your husband is an entrepreneur. So with both of you being entrepreneurs at during this new chapter of your entrepreneurship journey, how did you guys find that balance of not just relationships between you and your husband, but actually being able to parent while still managing these businesses?
That's such a good question. So you brought up you're a Capricorn. My husband is a Virgo.
Oh, my
So
husband's a Virgo.
so you know where I'm going. Um, I don't even need to explain. So yes, so my husband is a Virgo. He knows what he wants and how he wants it and has to be done this way. And I don't care. The way you did it is wrong. So so and I'm a Taurus. So we all earth signs here. So what we did was I, I wasn't making money, at first when I was really just getting into it. It was just like, if I made a little money to, get some McDonald's, that was great, right? But he had Sunday and Mondays off, right? He owned a couple of barber shops, and the
Mm,
main one was the one he would be at, right? So he got to a point. He used to be, and he used to cut hair in the shop, and then he would, as my business started, he didn't have to really be there. Does that make sense? So
right,
Sunday and Monday, the shops were closed. So that's when I worked. And then as my business started making more money, he was like, well, all right, I can be at home Tuesday with the kids because we didn't have sitters. I had my family that helped us, but not with business, if that makes any
right,
sense. That was like, hey, you guys want to go to a movie? I had that type of help. But
right.
he would take, he was like, all right, I can take Tuesday off. I was like, okay, great. Then Wednesday, oh, it's not nothing, there's nothing really going on. It's chaperone. I'll take Wednesday. And then it got to a point where he couldn't do it on the busiest days, which were Friday and Saturday, because he had to make those rounds. And that's how I grew my business, was by him taking days off. So we used to tag team like that.
Wow.
Yeah, we tag team, and he was very, very, very supportive. Still is to this day, very supportive of it. It took a minute for him to get it, you know what I mean? And we started seeing the money in the bank account. It was like,
That's like,
what? Right, right. And me, especially when I had got my first studio, he was like, are you sure running the numbers? You know how those Virgos can be. And so, but no, we would tag team. So he would take time. He would read. Let me say this part: not take off, but he would work his schedule to where I can go on my photo sessions, and he's with the kids.
mm,
And then that's pretty much how we did it. I was going to work when the kids got in school. I would start my day so I could take them to school, drop them off, do everything. So I didn't start until 10 o'clock. And then I was done because I was out in the city. We live in the suburbs, so it's a little bit like Atlanta in terms of traffic, just a little. But I would be back at 2 o'clock so that I can pick the kids up from school. That's why they didn't notice,
right.
too much. And when my husband did have them, and that was when they were little, by the way. I was only gone for maybe like 2-3 hours, you know what I mean? Just like tops, if that makes any sense. But my schedule is why I got known for shooting in like full sun and all of that, because I had to shoot when my kids were at school. That's
Mm.
that whole thing. It all goes back to the kids. It all goes back to the kids.
Who would have known that that was the reason you guys?
Not only that, can I tell you one of the small story? This will be really quick. I use a lot of wide apertures. That was not because I think it's cool. It was because when I was starting my business, my third kid, who was the shyest at the time, where Didn't want to be around nobody. I don't like you. I don't like my mama. I don't care. Don't talk to me. Don't be around me. That was him, right? And he was kind of like inching out of his shell, if that makes any sense, because he was sandwiched in between the younger three who were bigger personalities. So they had a fashion show, and he said, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." And so I had a brand new camera, and I was just taking the pictures without a flash because I wasn't one of the photographers. These were just for me. And I cranked that aperture up at 1.6. And this was a bigger camera that I invested in. So it wasn't like we were rolling in money. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
this was, don't you mess this camera up type
Right.
thing. So I took the pictures and whatnot. So I took this Noah. So I took Noah in the bathroom. I'm like, "No, you did so good." And my camera fell to the floor and broke on the aperture ring. Because if you drop your camera, you pick it up, see if it works.
Right. Just see.
Does it work? And I didn't know that it was broke on the aperture ring. It was broke at 1.6. The next day, I had you see how I remember this? This boy is 24 now. This happened when he was 4. I had a photo session with a Chicago White Sox player, Jim Tomei, and which is a big deal for me because I'm just now getting into bigger clients. And I go to his house, pull out my camera. I only had one. I had no backup camera because I was broke. So I had that camera, and I'm like, why can't I move the dial? Broke. So I had to figure this out on the fly. Took the pictures. Pictures are beautiful. I felt like it was a superstition. I felt God said, you better leave that camera on
Stick
1.6.
to that.
I never changed it. That's how it started.
Wow.
That's how it started.
Look how we create motherhood and these kids raise the brand. Like,
That's what happened. That's literally how that started. And I just felt in it, and it's worked for me. And but that's it. It was because of my kids.
so now that you started this entrepreneurship journey with your children, how did you get your name out there?
Okay, so I don't even know if this is a funny story, but I knew when I started my business, I really wanted to make money at it. So I started to research some of the higher end businesses that were in the area. And so the way I looked at it was, because I'm in Chicago, it wasn't necessarily finding the areas that had the big houses. I had to find the main artery. So what I did was I researched businesses in downtown Chicago on Rush Street, which is one of the more higher end areas, and I looked for children's stores. And then I looked for children's stores who were owned, not like chains and things like that, but who were just owned by people who also had a family. So I found this store. It's called Madison and Friends. They're not around anymore, but they do have a spinoff called the Denim Lounge. If anybody want to look up what I'm talking about, go right ahead. And I found that the husband and wife named the store after their daughter. So I'm like, oh, this is good. So what I used to do was right before I had all my kids on the nap schedule, same one. I know that's crazy, but I did it. They were all on the same nap schedule. I would get them in the car. My oldest was in private school that was out by my husband's job, just in case anything popped off. So he was about 20 minutes from us, from the house. So I would drive out there, but I would go early, and I would go all the way to the city, go into the store, and I would shop. Now, this store has toddler jeans for $200. I was not buying $200 jeans. But what I did buy were little barrettes, for my nieces, some socks, something I can afford. I used to go in there obviously at the same time because the same workers were there. And I knew that they would remember my face. I had my babies. The baby had one baby on my chest. Then I had the other in double strollers. I would go in there maybe 1 or 2 times a week, same time, all the time. And then it got to the point, hey, Audrey, how's the baby? And I'm like, gotcha. And so at that point, I said, hey, have you ever thought about having pictures on the walls or anything like that? And she was like, oh, I don't know, but maybe because this is just the worker. The worker always wants to impress the owner. She said, hey, you maybe want to ask David. I'm like, oh. So he comes out, and then she says, hey, she comes in here. She's a photographer. And I asked her, I said, have you ever had pictures on the wall? Because I didn't want to just leave cards, because that's clinical. It's, you want to get that first work in hand, relationship. So just to speed the story along, I ended up meeting with him, and I showed him my work, which sucked. Let me just say that part at the time. But the goal was not to really get pictures on the walls, even though I did. The goal was for them to see what it was like to work with me firsthand so that they can tell their clients about me. I needed to be word of mouth. So I said, hey, I could just take some pictures of your family. And so because the store is called Madison and Friends, after the daughter, I went and took pictures of his kids. He had a son and a daughter, and then his wife's children. And those pictures were on the wall, which is
Mm.
exactly what I wanted. Now, I paid for the pictures in the store. They bought some from their homes. I gave it to them half off, just in case anybody wanted those little details. But what the main goal was, word of mouth, so that I can get a hold of their client list, that, not get a hold of it, but when they talk about somebody, they're talking about me. That's how I got the baseball clients, because they had a major relationship with the Chicago Cubs and the Chicago White Sox. I knew all of this. I photographed who the Astro, because it was he was the coach of the Cubs at the time, but now he's the general manager of the Astros. What Dusty Baker. So I photographed Dusty Baker's family. He was my first biggest sale. All of that from the store, and these kids who I photographed, and I ended up doing other little promotions. These kids are all in their 20s. I still photograph these families to this day, but that one thing, that what took my business from 0 to 60 and has not looked back. So when people say, how do I get high-end clients? That's how I did it. That's literally how I did
Oh,
it.
smart playing chess.
Yeah, I didn't do anything online. I didn't do any of that. I went to introduce who I was. Still, that's like a corporate thought process, so that they can see what it's like working with me, who I was, what I sound like, all of that, because a bio online and an email can only
Only
do
do so
so
much.
much. And then I was able to read the room. I can read who he was as he was there. That's another corporate structure, at thing. I can look in his eyes and tell, okay, he have attitude today. Okay.
Not a good time.
That's not a good time to say that. So yeah, that's what I did firsthand with my babies. Walk in there and really know what I want, and not just be clinical about, hey, can I put some cards in there? No, I built the relationship first.
Wow, wow, that's beautiful. So, to close off, if there's any advice that you can give a creative mom about to go into this motherhood journey, you've already dropped so many gems, and I'm over here like, I'm ready to take this on now. But if there's anything else, if there is there anything that you would like to close with to give these creative moms going into this journey?
I would definitely say one of the things that we touched on are boundaries. Always create boundaries for yourself. No one has to know what those boundaries are. No one has to know why you created those boundaries. No one needs to know that. The only thing they have to know is what exists because of the boundaries. So if your cutoff time for working is 2 o'clock, your cutoff time for working is 2 o'clock. If you only can work on Friday and Saturday, those are the days you have to work. If someone says, well, I really want to book this photo session on a Monday, or the job takes place on a Monday, can you come in? No, that day, then book that day. You're booked with your baby. I mean, that no one has to know. Run it just like a business. When you start giving too much explanation, it makes people look at you differently. Remember, you are who people perceive you to be.
Mm.
And until you work on what that perception is going to be, then you're going to give people a chance to come up with that for you. So don't give too much information. The only people who need to know who your boundaries are your family. No one else needs to know like why they exist. The other, your clients, business associates, whatever, they just have to know they exist. That's it. Period.
Mm.
Period.
Oh, I love this so much. Yes, boundaries, boundaries, boundaries. Now, before we close, Audrey, we know that you teach workshops. We know that you have a lot going on. Please plug in what you have coming up.
So I have an educational website, which is www.awteaches.com. So on there is especially works good for moms. So it's a lot of tutorials up there if anybody's interested in how I shoot and things of that nature. So that's there for them to, take a look at, see what, if anything interests them. I would love to have them join on. And then I do have in-person workshops, and we travel, and I don't know, like you get me on the spot. I know I have Vancouver this weekend. and then, Chicago, New Orleans, North Carolina, and I think that that's it. But we do like 6 or 7 a year and just different cities.
Yes, yes. But Audrey, thank you so much for all of these gems because you have me excited to tackle motherhood now. You've given me a newfound confidence about how to balance business and motherhood and being okay with setting those boundaries and knowing that you can create the life that you want, not just in business, but in motherhood and in family as a wife as well. So thank you again so much for being so vulnerable, for being so honest, and for being real about this journey.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was great. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Baby Bump and Business. I hope today's conversation reminded you that you're not alone in this journey, that there's so much power in building something beautiful while becoming someone new. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate, review, and share it with another mama or creative who needs the encouragement. Your support helps this community grow and lets more stories like ours be heard. To stay connected and get updates on new episodes and real talk from creative moms like you, be sure to follow us on Instagram at Baby Bumpin' Business. Until next time, keep creating, keep growing, and give yourself the grace that you deserve.